Hello and welcome to another video on React Immersive. If you missed the last video, in that I gave a small introduction about React Immersive, what it is, how it is used and where you can use it, right? So if you missed it, please go and check it out, then you get a better understanding on what I show you in this video. The links will be in the description. So in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to install the React Immersive library and then a small coding demo to show you how to write the code in order to get your interactivity to the models. So let's start. So for that, let's go to our documentations page. Right, in this you have getting started. If we go there, you can see it shows the installation steps very thoroughly. You can give it a read. It's clearly explained on how to use this. So first of all, what you do is you install the package in a React app. So you can use npm, yarn or pnpm. So for now let's use npm. So I can copy the installation command and then go to my React app. This is a React app, right? So in the terminal, all you can paste and then enter npm install LiveRoom Tech React Immersive, and it will install it to the latest version. So till that install, I can even show you our npm site or package, right? So you can see the latest version as of now is 3.0.0, and here shows the installation command as well and the links to our website and documentation. Right, so let's see if it's installed. Right, it's installed successfully. And then if you go back to documentation, it says next to get a license key. So for that you can sign in or sign up at our React Immersive console. So if we go there, it will sign you in. It will show a sign in page for your access. So right now I'm signed in, so I see the page here. Then you can go ahead and click on create a free license key. So I'll click create key and it generated the key here, and then you can copy the key and use it in your application. Then we have the next step, is a quick start step, is to define your object bindings. So if you can remember, in the last video I showed you how to generate object bindings using our binding builder. So let's go ahead and go to our binding builder. You can click this editor link here and then it will open our 3D editor. So for this I'll use a 3D model, a very simple 3D model, right? A light bulb model. So you can see here it's a very simple model, only 3 nodes, right? I will be using this throughout this video. So then in order to generate object bindings, so we haven't done any changes to this, we haven't made any changes, we haven't changed colors, materials, right? All you need is the default object bindings. So for that you can come here and click the export button. In there you can select whether it's a JSON or TypeScript. I'll select TypeScript and then save it in my local machine. Then after you define your object bindings, the next step is mount the viewer to your application. So let's do that. If I go to my React app I showed earlier, and in our app.tsx I have written a main class here with a class name, just simple styling, right? And then you can see the model viewer component from our library. Import model viewer from LiveRoom Tech / React Immersive. Then you have to pass 2 props mandatorily. One is model URL and the other is license key. So for the model URL we give the light bulb I just showed. So I added the light bulb here in our public folder. So then you can write here /light_bulb.glb. Then for license key we generated one in our developer console, you can go ahead and then copy your key, come back and paste it to the prop here. Then the next is the most important prop, the object bindings. So we already downloaded it to our local machine, right? Then what you can do is you can go ahead and drag it and drop into your project, or you can even copy the code and paste it here. So I already had one, I just replaced it with the new one, and you can see there are 3 nodes and their respective data here. So then what you do is you export this object bindings from this file and import it to your app.tsx and pass it as a prop to the model viewer. So you can see it's passed here. So let's take a look on how it looks now. So if I run npm run dev, it will spin up the local server, and then I can go to localhost 5173 since it's a Vite project, right? And then you can see it rendered the light bulb as a simple and nothing edited model. So what I want to do to this bulb is, when I click on like any color, I want the bulb to light up with that color. So that's my end goal. So as you can see now, this model is not interactive, it's just a model that you can view, rotate, zoom in and zoom out, right? So let's go step by step towards that goal. So if I show you the code here, this is my app.tsx. I have another file called app2. So in it, if I change the main to get app2, and this is the code to get the colors on the bulb. So I'll just run it and show you what there is. You can see I have added 4 colors here: warm white, red, green and blue. And when I click on them, it lights up the bulb with the respective color. So how is it done? If I go back to the code, you can see we have the bulb colors here, and then we have mapped the bulb colors on the bottom. So this is not something that comes from a library, this is basic JavaScript code here. And then on click on any of those cards right here, you fire the illuminate bulb function, and in this function is where we have called the respective callbacks from our own library. So you can see we have imported something called use object bindings, a custom hook from React Immersive package, and in that you can get the current object bindings, you can set new object bindings, and there's another property to set material. So if you can remember in our 3D editor, if I show you here, you have the material panel here, right? So here you can set any material to the model. So same thing here, what we have done is using code. So for that we have the hook, and from that hook it returns a function set material, and then you can use that function to change the material of the model. So if I show the local demo that I am running, basically what happens here is when you click on the button, it changes the material of the bulb. Simple as that, right? So in order to change the material, like I showed you, you can use the set material function. So what I have done is I have called set material and pass the node ID, which is this, right? We only need to change the color of this ID, and you can see the ID here is glass 002_0. So that's the model object ID. So what you do is you take that ID, pass it as the first argument, and in the second argument you pass what needs to be changed in the object bindings. So in order for the material to be applied in the object bindings, here inside style you need to add this object, right? Base color, emissive intensity, opacity and blending mode. So all you need to do is you need to add that into the style. For that reason is why we have a set material function. So we have done that here. So if I remind you, when you click on those color cards at the bottom, it fires the illuminate bulb function, and then we fire the set material function. It sets the material to the model, and that's what you can see here, right? So if I show this from the 3D editor, now what we did was from the code, right? You can even do the same thing from the 3D editor using the UI there is. So you can click on the shell here, and then you can change the values here. So we have given emissive color, base color and opacity and blending mode additive. So you can give the emissive is in here. Emission means that property gives out its own light. So since this is a bulb, it gives a light. So since that we use emission, so you can enable emission for this. Give it a color. I'll give it like yellow, right? And then you can give an intensity. Then we also change opacity, so we can enable that and then change how you want it, right? So you can see we get the same effect, but in this case we did it in the binding builder using our UI here, but in here we did it directly through code. So you can see how this helps people who are not developers. They can do it with this and they can get the effect that they want. Developers, you all can use these functions and then get the same effect from your code programmatically. So here you can see when we change the object bindings, it shows that the style and material have changed as well, right? You can see the object bindings data here, right? So right now you need to click this cards to change the color, but we can make it more interactive by changing the color to change by clicking on the bulb itself. So here when you click on the bulb, I need to change the color. So let's do that in our next example. So if I go to F3 and then change to render F3, you can see the earlier in F2 you had the colors mapped. Right now it's removed. Then you have a more simple code. You have the bulb colors, you have the use object binding same as earlier with the set material. Here you can see set material. All we are changing in this is the colors are same, the actions are same. What we are changing in this example is where we fire the action. So right now if I show the example live in our local server, you can see if I click on this bulb, it changes color. So that's what we want. If you click on the bottom part, it doesn't change, right? It only needs to change when I click on this. So that's what's happening here. So to get that effect, we are given a prop called on object select. So this fires when you select any object on the model. So on object select, what you do is we have called a cycle bulb color, and in that it returns the selected object as well. Then we check if the object ID is this glass ID. If it is not, we return there is no action forward. If it is that glass ID, then we change the colors. This is just JavaScript, nothing special. And then we call a same set material function where we pass the class ID and change the material using object bindings, right? So this set material function is very helpful. You just need to pass the data that needs to change. Otherwise, if this wasn't there, you will have to take the object binding, spread it at the new object binding, set it to a state and pass it to a new state, right? So we have made it simple for developers to just call this function and set the object bindings. So now you can see when you click on it, it changes color. So I feel like this is still not a complete bulb effect, right? So if you see a bulb, it gives out a glow around it, right? So there is like a small glow around the bubble, around the bulb. So that gives like a light is really shining through. So let's do that in the next example too. Before I do it in the code, I'll just do it in our editor. So that effect which I mentioned, it gives a glow, is done from the scene. So if you go to the scene and if you go to post processing, we have something called bloom here. So if I enable bloom, zoom out a bit and give it a intensity, right, and also give it a radius. After you give it a radius, right, then you enable it, you give the intensity, and you give a level. Now you can see it gives kind of a glow around the bulb, right? So now it gives a greater effect of the bulb. So that's nice as well. So this is done through the UI and not code. So we can do the same thing using the code. So if we go back to our code, right, then we have app 4. So if I show app 4, in this we have the same colors, bulb colors. We take the index, that is for simplicity reasons, so we can change the color. Then we have the model viewer, right, and in the model viewer you have a new prop called scene config. So because that change is done by the scene, we need to pass a scene config. So in order to get a basic scene, default scene export, what you do is you come to the scene tab, click export and get your export. So I'll save it to my local machine, right, and then what you do is you paste your code or your scene config as a file or as a data and then import it to your model viewer. You can see scene config, and then you have passed it to here. So but we need to update the scene config, right? If you just soon as you load the model, if you want the bloom, all you do is you get the scene config and pass it to your model viewer. So but we need this scene config during runtime, right, not soon as you run the application. So the same code as the earlier example I showed, the only difference is we have update scene config. So this comes from use scene config hook from the React Immersive library. There you need to pass the initial scene config, which is the scene config we downloaded from the 3D editor. So you have passed it here, and then it returns the scene config, the current scene config, and then update scene config function. There are many more that's been returned, right? So these two we need for our use case. Then you get update scene config, and then you pass the values that should be changed in the scene config. So in this case it's post processing Like if you go to the 3D editor, right, what I change is post processing and the bloom panel, right. So here post processing, the bloom, and then enable it, give intensity, the threshold, midpoint blur, radius and levels. So this function is called when I cycle bulb color, which is called when I click on the object. So let's go ahead and do that. Now there is no light. If I click on this bulb, it should light up. So if I click here, you can see the bulb also lights up with the color, and using our scene we have given a glow around the bulb. So this is, as you can see, it's during runtime, right. You can change the color, and the scene config also changes accordingly with the color. So that's how we created a interactive model using just a non-interactive model, which is the light bulb in this case. So I hope you got a idea of what you can do with this. So this is just a very simple example, right. There are many advanced examples that you can try out. So go ahead and download the React Immersive library and then try it out for yourself. If there are any problems you run into, if there are any bugs, so please let us know in the comments or in our GitHub repo. Also, the documentation is written in a way it's easy to understand, with everything clearly detailed, right. It even gives you the option for start object bindings. We have given a model here. You can download it and you can edit your public folder. Then the object bindings file, you can download that, edit your public folder, and then run it straight away, and you will get a model ready with model viewer. So that's our model viewer. You can even render the simple model viewer. So if you, this is the model viewer, you can even render the simple model viewer. Same as the model viewer, all you do is replace simple model viewer and give the model URL. That's all, and then you get the simple model viewer component in your application. You can even get the binding builder, which is this entire application. You can even get it, render it as yours using the component binding builder, and then pass your license key. So for simple model viewer, there is no license key. You can download the model and just use this component and use it in your application. If you want to give a 3D viewer to add models and give your users to get that experience. So this is free to use simple model viewer. All you do is download the library, give a model URL, and then edit your application. For model viewer and binding builder, you need a license key. Also, you can see in documentation we have mentioned the hooks, right. There are so many hooks to make the developer experience really easy. So please have a read through them. Like you can see, use viewer selection, it passes the you can clear the selection that you have made. You can set selected object binding, right. Even use your hover, it shows which object is currently hovered. Then you use your model, it provides the model lifecycle state, like the is loading, is ready. If there's an error, you can identify that, the object count, and handle if the model is loaded with an error, or you can handle the function when the model is loaded. You have camera connection, animation, you can create animations with use view animations, right. Also effects, you can create effects like the flicker example I showed you in the last video, it's mentioned here. Then use object binding is to get a binding record after passing an object ID, right. So there are many hooks. Please have a read and use which suits your use case and create great applications. So thank you for watching this video. I hope to meet you in another video. If you have any questions, please drop them down in the comments, or you can contact us to clarify any problems that you have. Thank you and have a great day.